Hey, everybody, this is Mike Brown, and I want to welcome you to this week's episode of The Art of Letting Go. We got a really special episode in store for you. But while I have your attention, please, on whatever app, whatever streaming service you listen on, please leave us a review. Let people know what you think. Let me know what you think. Sort of like Annie Michelle did last month. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the compliment. And also, please subscribe to our newsletter. There's a link in the bio. And also, follow us on all social media. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode and enjoy the show. Yo, what up? This is Mike Brown, and this is The Art of Letting Go. Today, I have a special guest in the building. You are a coach, a workshop facilitator, community builder, the founder of Where the Soul Grows. Would you mind introducing yourself to the people?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here, Mike. Exactly like you said, I like to think of myself as a multi-hyphenated creator. I think that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, I do coaching. I am a community builder. Yes, I founded this community called Where the Soul Grows, where specifically it's a space for queer men of color to come together and talk about healing, vulnerability, these things. I also love to write and really just on a path of healing in this journey of life and just understanding myself more and really just, you know, trying to be my most authentic self.
I love that, man. Joshua, welcome to the Art of Letting Go. How are you feeling today?
You know, I am feeling okay. I'm trying to practice that thing where it's like I'm not lying about how I'm actually feeling, right? Where it's like I'm good all the time, because that's not the truth. And like I just said, I'm trying to be my most authentic self. So when you ask me how I am, I'm okay. I had a friend yesterday that asked me on a scale of 1 to 10, how you feeling? I said, I'm a 7. And then I'm like, no, I think actually I'm a 6. I think I'm a 6. And yeah, there's a lot of shifts in my life currently, and so I'm sitting within those feelings and allowing myself to feel them. And it's been a process throughout the last 2.5 weeks, because I've gone probably from 1 to like 2 to 4 to 6 on that scale of 1 to 10. So today I'm feeling okay.
You know what? I appreciate you sharing that. I'm feeling probably like a 7. I will say over the past couple of months, just moving and transitioning into full-time entrepreneurship,
Mm,
it can definitely be an emotional, I won't say an emotional roller coaster, but it's a lot of riding the waves. And
mm,
I appreciate you sharing that, because I think so often I'm feeling good, or I'm making other people feel good, that I don't really express when I'm feeling low, and I keep it to myself a lot of times, just because I feel like I don't want to put this on other people. And
yeah.
it's funny, sometimes it seeps through and still comes out on other people. So, you know, I think the best way to describe how I feel is present right now, and
Mm.
really like giving myself space to show up however I need to in that presence.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. And it kind of it kind of reminds me of a conversation I had with my therapist around that feeling of like not expressing how I'm truly feeling on the inside to people, and just kind of just saying I'm good because I think I'm uncovering this part of me that feels like I might be a burden on other people. So I don't want to put that burden onto other people and have them have to carry what it is that I'm carrying, especially specifically for my speaking for myself, because I'm in this space of like wanting people to like go on this healing journey and like let go of like pain and sadness or grief or whatever, right? Or face it or become aware of it. And so me having to put more of that onto someone else with my own whatever's going on, I've struggled to be very open about how I'm feeling at times, because of that feeling of being a burden on other people, and this like act of hyper independence as well, which is really weird for me considering the fact that I do community work. So I'm like, let's be a community, and I'm so like I that's literally what I want so badly, but I also struggle with the fact of like being hyper independent as well. So it's kind of like a, what do you call it? It's clashing.
Yeah, that's so relatable for me because I do feel like a community builder, but I am so like I'm hyper independent because I've been that way my whole life. And even just, you know, navigating my own journey with my queerness and hiding and having to like be to myself, that I guess there's still some of that like residual, you know, that residual energy of like trying to shake that off. Like I guess if I was hiding for this long, I'm having to like now work my way out of it. So it's been a journey, and I'm glad we're having this conversation today. That's really why I wanted to talk to you, because like I said, I see you building community, I see you sharing resources, and I do the same thing. And a lot of the things I see you share online are conversations that I feel like I have privately. So
Mm,
it's really dope to share space with somebody, like just sharing space with somebody that's like-minded, and yeah, just opening these conversations up to the world.
yeah.
And I wanted to start with community, like in our
Mhm,
conversation, because for me, for a long time, it was really just challenging to navigate community as a queer person. Like my exposure when I came out was going to gay bars, and to me, that doesn't feel like a healthy starting point. But I'm curious to know, like, what was your experience navigating community, and how has it changed over time?
yeah. Great question. I appreciate it. For me, I would first say that I think your experience is very common for people, especially I think for all of us. But I'm not sure like when it is that you came out and started to explore yourself. But a friend of mine, Sovereign, has always said that we have inherited like the club scene and the bar scene, right? And so immediately that's kind of where we flock to create community, because that's almost all we have, because of how, in the past, being gay, we use the term queer now, right? Well, not everyone does, but just thinking of like back in the 80s, right? It wasn't acceptable, right, to be gay. And so we have the queer, excuse me, the bar scene and the club scene that we kind of gravitate towards when we first think about what community could look like, or where do we even go. Um, and so yeah, it's difficult for us when we're coming into our identity to really find spaces that we can feel uh, like welcomed, or we can find like discovery in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming. But I had the same experience as you when I was coming out, and I came out pretty young. I considered myself always to like be gay and like never in the closet. Like even when I was in middle school, people would ask me like, "Are you gay?" And I never said that I wasn't, but I would always be like, like I just kind of brushed it off. But freshman year of high school is when I really just was like, "Yeah, I'm gay." Um, and of course, when I began to get older, turned 17, 18, not 17, but when I turned 18, started to go into the clubs and bars. And that's how I kind of understood how to begin building community, such as yourself and such as a lot of other people. But it was really difficult to find really close knit friends because, yeah, you just like, we often have to, it feels almost like we're still hiding, even when we do come into ourselves, even when we are accepting of our identity, even when we start to find spaces we can go into, but there's not a lot of spaces that we can go to. So it still feels like, well, where am I supposed to go if there's only this one bar that I can go to that is going to allow me to be who I am? So for a long time, I don't think I really understood how to build community, and it was just going to the clubs, and I had 3 or 4 really close friends who were also gay. And so as I got older, I started to like want to understand, well, how can I make new friends? How can I discover more about myself? How can I discover more about other people? And I started to notice on social media when I would talk about my own like things that I was struggling with, it would have people gravitate towards me. So I started to understand that vulnerability was like a great way to build community. I didn't know that that's what it was at that time. I just knew like me expressing myself, people were messaging me, commenting and saying, "Wow, like I can't believe someone else feels like that. And thank you so much for sharing that. I feel so connected to you," all of these things. So that was kind of like the beginning of my community building. And that was probably back in, I don't know, maybe 2013, 2014 when I was doing that. And now I understand that vulnerability is like the conduit for me to create community, because it allows people to see the real me and the real world and how we navigate that and how difficult that is, and that we don't have to do that alone, because we are not alone in our struggles, because many people also face the same challenges that I face or that you face. And so I think building community, for me, in my opinion, starts at being vulnerable and being open about who you are, so that people can see who you are and gravitate towards you because they see you and they know you.
That's beautiful. Yeah, as I was listening to you, I was just like, I didn't have any queer community when I came out. Like, I didn't come out until I was 26 years old.
Mm,
And I will say most of my journey I spent in denial of even being gay, because I grew up in Houston. I just never saw a gay man that looked like me showed up in the world in the way that I do. I thought I was masculine.
yeah.
So it's just like, this doesn't make sense. And when I moved to Los Angeles, that's when I started meeting these like masculine men that identified as gay. And it really shifted my world and like my whole perspective. And entering the bar scene, I realized like a lot of my connections weren't really based off of common interest. It was more based off desirability and attraction. And it wasn't until I started playing in a gay basketball league till I was able to like really build like healthy connections with people.
Mhm.
And I guess something that comes up for me is like, just how important do you think boundaries are when building connections? Because I know that line, it's especially just in the community, it can get blurred of like, am I trying to be this person's friend because
Yeah.
of our common interests, or am I trying to be this person's friend because I'm attracted to them?
Mhm.
Like, how do we, I guess, find balance for ourselves in that, not even for the other person, you know?
Yeah. Boundaries are super important. Super, super important. I think, especially, I don't know if it's right to say especially in our community, but I think in my experience, I have found, and many of us, I think many people and many gay men in our community or queer men in our community might also have the same kind of thought, that when you meet someone else, another gay man, immediately there's kind of like this feeling of sexuality or sexual tension, or just like sex kind of is at the forefront a lot for many gay men. That's what we experience, or that's what a lot of people feel like they experience. And so I think creating those boundaries and for yourself is really important, because you have to know how to how to express those boundaries to people that you're coming into contact with and potentially into community with. And I think it's also important first to gain awareness of yourself and to gain emotional intelligence, so that you can understand where another person is potentially in their life in regards to their own awareness and emotional intelligence. Because the important thing about building community that I think a lot of people don't talk about is those uncomfortable conversations that you have to have with other people that you're in community with. And if you don't have awareness, or if you don't have emotional intelligence, you may not be able to have a conversation with somebody that you want to be in community with and tell them, "Hey, I have this boundary. I see you as a friend. You may have seen me as something more. I don't want that. You know, I want you as a friend. This is the boundary that you cannot cross. How do you feel about that?" You know what I'm saying? And hopefully, if they're at the same level as you, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but if they're at the same level as you in terms of awareness and emotional intelligence, they might be able to say, oh, I understand that. I understand I can't cross that boundary. I also understand that you only want to be friends. And therefore, I will respect that. And we don't have to take this any further beyond the line of friendship that we've drawn here in the sand. And that's not to say you still can't be attracted to another person. I think attraction is, you can't stop that regardless of if a person is your friend, if you're in a relationship and you find yourself attracted to somebody else. Attraction is attraction. I think what's important is for us to be able to understand ourselves enough to know when to not act on that attraction or how to respect another person's boundaries. So as an individual, you need to start with yourself and gain that awareness and emotional intelligence to then be able to translate your boundaries to somebody else and say, these are my boundaries. This is the line you don't cross. Really respect you, really want to be your friend. But if you can't understand that, then we can't be friends. And that's also okay. Right. And that might be an awakening for that other person to gain their own perspective of themselves and awareness and emotional intelligence to then create community after that experience so that they can understand how to then create community without inserting anything that is non-consensual or just not needed or wanted at all. I hope that makes sense.
It does. And what you said was so powerful about your own emotional intelligence, because I could think of times in my journey where like I gave into that desire, that feeling, just because and like at the core of my mind, knowing like I only see this person as a friend, and then your friendship gets uncomfortable, and it's just like, again, I wish these were tools that we had in place. You know, but here we are creating those tools, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
dope. Um, I kind of wanted to touch on, just because we're talking about self, like what does your self-love look like? And where are you at in the journey of self-love?
Gosh, my journey has been up and down. Honestly, I think I've come a long way in terms of loving myself. I've learned a lot. But even just recently, I've had to kind of take a step back and ask myself, oh, maybe I didn't love myself as much as I did. And that's just the question that pops up for me. But I challenge it because I tend to think about, okay, if I'm asking myself that question, is there any proof of that? Is that a fact? What is making me question my own love of self, and what may have happened or transpired before this question that I can kind of analyze and ask myself, well, if this is true, then where are the facts, right? So for me, I'm in a space of reflection, and that from myself, I think, is the greatest form of self love, because I'm a person that continuously wants to grow and wants to become a better person and wants to become my most authentic self and wants to always be empathetic towards others, because I see others as human beings, because I am also a human being. And so I'm in this kind of journey of understanding that none of us are perfect, including myself. And that for me is a form of self-love, because it reminds me that nothing that I do is a failure or is necessarily a mistake, but everything I do is a lesson. And so if I can take everything as a lesson and apply it to myself and say, how can I grow from this? For me, that in and of itself is self love, because I'm saying, I want to be a better person for myself so that I can also be a better person for other people and for this world. And so analyzing myself and reflecting on myself and allowing myself to grow, allowing myself to feel these feelings, and putting the effort into really picking apart some of the things that I maybe didn't pick apart in the past, and challenge those thoughts, challenge those behaviors, challenge those patterns, and say, I don't like this about myself. This I actually do like about myself. This I think I can change. So that way, again, it's all to continue on this journey of loving, or of self-actualization, I guess I should say. Um and sometimes I think like, okay, well, should I continue to do that? Because like, how much can you actually self actualize? Am I just reflecting on myself too much sometimes? Am I an overthinker? So sometimes I think about that because, you mentioned earlier you just wanted to be. And sometimes I feel that. I'm like, I just want to be. Like, maybe I shouldn't be thinking this much. Maybe I shouldn't be reflecting this much. Maybe this isn't a problem. Am I creating a problem? So sometimes I think like that, and so sometimes I do let things kind of like go, and I'm just like, just let it be, don't think too much about it. But I think the best way that I practice self love currently is to really own in on myself and self reflect about who I am and what makes me truly happy, what brings me joy, and what makes me feel like I'm existing in this world in the way that I'm supposed to be existing.
That's dope. I met Law Roach like 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to him about like just really balancing those negative thoughts that come up, because I feel like for me, and I think just us as creatives and just,
Mm.
you know, Black people, queer people, like they just, that negative voices, that negative chatter is just always there. And I'm curious to know, how do you balance it? How do you, because it comes up, but
Yeah.
how do you, I guess, keep control of it?
Community. My friends, I have a best friend that I go to when I'm feeling doubtful, when I'm feeling lost. And I love him so much because he always reminds me of who I am. And I'm so blessed to say I have a few friends that remind me of who I am. And I have my best friend who he always says, you're the light. Like, why? You're the light. Like, you can't forget that. Like, you're Joshua Cruz. Like, you're the light. And then I have another friend that tells me, you're the prize. Like, I don't know how much I have to explain it to you. And he's been telling me this for like 2 years. He's like, I don't know what's wrong with you. Like, he's a little bit harder on me. So he's like, I don't know what's wrong with you. You're the prize. Why don't you think that you're the prize? I gotta tell you this shit all the time. And I'm just like, I know, and sometimes it sticks on me and I'm like, I am. Like, I know I am. I'm so incredible, right? But those doubts do come up. So when I'm
Yeah.
feeling like that, I call my friends because they speak life into me and they remind me of who I am and they remind me of what I've done and they remind me that ex- just my existence is amazing. And then I have my group that I've created, right? And they're so incredible because even recently I was feeling like, wow, I don't know if I'm the leader that I think that I am. I don't know if I'm the leader that people think that I am. Like, am I a leader? Like, what does that mean? And I was just feeling really down, and we had a virtual get together over Zoom. We have them a few times a month, and I got really vulnerable about how I was feeling. And the life that they spoke into me was just amazing. And it was just a reminder like, wow, I've created this community for people to come together to build friendship and to heal. And I can't forget about that, even when I doubt myself about what I'm doing. So I think it's so important to find the people, especially that know you for you at your core. Like, know your ins and outs, know your struggles, know your challenges, know you from when you were broke, from when you lost your jobs, from your heartbreaks, because they're going to be able to see you exactly for who you are and remind you of that person that they've seen throughout all of those moments in your life. And for me, that's the way that I balance my feelings of self-doubt, because they're speaking that life into me that maybe in that moment I don't have the power or the voice to actually say.
It's James Woods, aka That Yoga Dude, with Feel Free to Feel Free, and a feeling of moving on, moving past doubt, stress, worry, anxiety, moving into abundance, confidence, freedom, peace, joy, love, moving away from what's familiar into unknown but okay places. I know I'm gonna be okay. long as I'm breathing, as long as I can find a place of gratitude, as long as I can find a place of peace, as long as I can find a breath, I'll be okay. And everything around me and within me will be more than okay. Breathing in, the release, the exchange, the movement between the inhale and exhale releases me from the past and continues to ground me in the present, allowing me to be here, to be healed, and still moving forward. Taking a deep breath. And as always, feel free to feel free, and namaste. Peace.
Where do you feel like you discovered your vulnerability? Because I feel like it's not something that we're just naturally taught. And for me, like I feel like being open about my sexuality really like created like a full space of vulnerability for me in my life. But I'm curious to know, like, where did you discover yours?
Yeah, you know what? I gotta be honest and say that I think I've always been like this. I think I've always been a person that wasn't afraid to talk about his feelings. Um, when I grew up, when I was growing up, I was a mama's boy, and I think my mom really embedded in me the opportunity to feel my emotions and to like release them. You know, I remember always like when anytime I cried, she was there and she would hold me and tell me it's okay, right? And she never scolded me for crying or she never made me feel like it was wrong. So I think I got that strength from her allowing me to be just emotional. Um, so as I've gone through life, I can think about, you know, in my past where I don't think that I've ever felt the need to hide what I was feeling. And I've always talked about my struggles and challenges. Now it's on a more bigger platform because I have a bigger platform. But even I can even think about like when I be at work, when I was younger, I worked at Starbucks and I remember like talking about issue, like just feelings that I had at work, and people would be like, "Oh my god, you're so inspiring," and I'm just like, I'm just talking, like I'm just expressing what's in me. You know what I'm saying? So I will say that I think around 2016, no, I want to say like 2015. I started reading books about self-help and books around like learning more about the ego and things like that. I read like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle and The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and these books really helped me to understand the ego. It really helped me to understand um emotions and feelings and how to translate those into the real world. And I think when I learned about the ego, that was a really shifting moment for me because I was like, oh, there's this thing, like these voices in my head that are actually not me. And they're telling me these things or they're saying these things. And I can actually talk back to them and say, oh, no, that's not true. Like, actually, this is true. And this is what I believe. And this is what I see for myself. So that was like a major transition for me. And I think that's when I really started to become even more vulnerable and use my platforms the way that I do now. I've been doing this for a very long time. Now I think it's where it's now being more noticed, and I've gotten more rooted in what my mission is and who I am. But I would say I've always been like this, but learning about the ego has really helped to elevate that and my understanding of it.
That's dope. What advice would you give to people that are looking for safety, that don't feel safe? Like, what steps would you tell them to take to like find or even like just create a safe space for themselves?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I would say it's really hard to it's really hard to say start with vulnerability because that's a hard thing for a lot of people to do, I think. It's a scary thing. And especially in the queer community, I think a lot of us have this fear that if we are vulnerable, people are going to take advantage of us. People are not going to respect us. People are not going to want to be around us. But I think vulnerability is such an important step to take. But find small ways to do that, whether that be with the people that are currently in your life. Start to be vulnerable with them in a way that maybe you haven't been, to people that you actually trust, right? To people that you feel can hold that space for you. Because once you begin to express yourself and to let out these things that you're feeling within you, it's going to give you the bravery and the courage to continue to do that. And that's going to create safety around you because you're going to have the strength in yourself to know, well, I've accepted this about myself. I can speak on it. And so I feel safe enough to express that out into the world because nothing that any outside person will say to me can affect me because I know my truth, right? So I think starting with vulnerability with people that you already feel safe with is a really great great place to start, right? And I know not everybody might not have safe people in their lives right now. So it could be difficult to find ways to do that. But I think we are in such an important time right now where there is access in one way or another to safe spaces that you can try out and see if it's for you, such as podcasts like this, right? Or the healing collective that I have for queer men of color. Like, you can go on Google and you can probably search these things and find stuff, or go on YouTube and search these things and find these communities because they do exist. And I hope that we can continue to build more spaces like this where we can feel safe. But I think we live in a really great time where there's more of these spaces than there used to be. And so I would say take advantage of that and start somewhere. And lastly, what I would say about that is when you do find a space that feels safe, if it's not your forever space, feel free to also create your own, right? Because if you create something, then you can know that it's really safe because it's coming from you and you know what you want it to look like. But it's really important to self-reflect on yourself and to ask yourself, how do I want to show up as a safe space for other people? Because we have to remember that when we're creating spaces, we have to create that safety outside of our perspective and not think of only what makes us safe, but what could potentially make other people safe as well. And you won't be perfect in that. You will have to ask your community for feedback, but it's important for us to take those necessary steps, especially when we're creating space for other people.
I love that. Something that came up for me just now was a post that you made about, and I feel like it's a conversation that feels so necessary to have because even myself, I've experienced it. But you shared that gay men a lot of times use sex as a coping skill for low self-worth. And that resonated with me so much because I can think of times, where I just would use sex to just get off energy. And at certain points in my life, it made it hard to even have sex with the person that I was actually attracted to because I was using this improperly. And I guess my question is how does one, because I know for myself, I became aware of it by just really having conversations with people. I remember even going to a sexual addiction counseling just to see hey, what's going on with me, and realizing oh wow, it's because of my self-worth that I'm just putting myself in these positions. But saying all that to say how do people become aware if they aren't aware, and just reflect on that and build healthier coping tools in general?
Yeah. I resonate so much with what you say because I experienced the same thing. I think that post for me too was a little bit scary to write and to express because similar to you, I've used in the past sex as a coping mechanism, as a way to make myself feel good, to find validation. And it's hard because, if you are not doing, if you are not having sex for the right reasons, it can take a toll on your mental health, on your body, on you, on your soul. I think the the most important thing for people to begin to realize if they're using sex as a coping mechanism is, how do they feel after having sex, right? And I'll use myself as an example. When I used to use sex as a coping mechanism, anytime that I was done with having sex with someone, I would always feel like garbage after. I would ask myself, why did I do this? Why did I let this happen to myself? Is this all I am? I would just feel at my lowest. And I started to reflect on those feelings, and the pattern was showing up. You know what I'm saying? I would see the pattern every single time. Before, I would be so excited. I was like, yes, like I can't wait to do this. Like the feelings inside of me of like wanting to have sex were so excited, and I was ready for it, and the passion was there, right? And then once it was finished, it was like I went from all the way up here to all the way down here, just feeling like complete shit. And I'm just like, why do I feel like this? I thought this was going to make me feel better. I thought it was going to make me feel more beautiful and sexy, but it just made me feel worse. And so if you're a person that is having a lot of sex and you're feeling like this after every encounter, then that is when you should start to reflect on if this is something that you're doing just to make yourself feel better. And if you don't know how to begin to understand if this is something that you're using to make yourself feel better, I always recommend journaling as like the first step. Journaling, people I feel like don't take journaling as seriously as they should, or don't understand how impactful and powerful it is, because what's happening inside of your mind is you're having all of these thoughts, and they're just circling and encircling and circling, and there's nowhere for them to go except in here. So when you can write them on a piece of paper in your journal, you are letting all of those thoughts out of your mind, and you're creating space for new thoughts, and you're creating space for new thinking. And this is going to give you more clarity and more understanding around what is happening to you. So when you put it on paper, you can read it back to yourself and it will make more sense. And that is when you can start to combat those feelings of not feeling worthy enough, or not even combat them, but you can start to begin to ask yourself, why am I feeling like this? Right? So when you journal it out, it's going to give you a space for you to get all of those feelings out, from all of those thoughts out from your mind. I would say that's a first step, such an important step that you can take for understanding what is happening to you, and also using that as a coping skill, right? If you want to get away from using sex as a coping skill, right? You want a new healing tool. Whenever you feel like you want to go out and you want to have sex because you're not feeling good about yourself, maybe journal instead, and ask yourself that question. Why do I want to have sex right now? What is coming up for me? What am I feeling in this moment, right? Am I angry? Did my friend make me mad? Did my sibling call me and ask me for money? Is my job stressing me out? Like, what is it actually that is making you feel like, okay, I can't deal with this. I need a distraction. Let me go have sex. You know what I'm saying? You have to understand what actually is causing you to feel like you want to run away and just go and have sex. Right? So I would say journaling, such an important tool that you can use, that's going to help you on your journey to really understanding more about yourself and your coping mechanisms. Again, so that you can get those thoughts out of your brain, and allow for a flow of new thoughts and clarity.
I love that. And I'm gonna add to that, grace, giving yourself grace, because it is a journey. You know, earlier this year, because I've been kind of doing the newsletter thing as well, and I had to write about just like going to apps, not even looking for anything, but just getting on an app just to get on an app, and asking myself that why, and like saying, oh, my self value may not be in place, or it may not be where it's supposed to be right now. So really, I really appreciate journaling as a tool for checking in.
Yeah. And I want to add a little bit to what you just said of giving yourself grace. That's so important, because I think a lot of the times I don't want people to hear this and think that what they're doing is like horrible and they need to stop right now. And oh my God, because to be honest, sometimes that's all you got. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes maybe the sex is what is fulfilling you in this moment, and that's the only thing that is keeping you together. Listen, that's okay. You know what I'm saying? Like you may have to start taking steps to finding more healthier ways to cope with what you're feeling. But sometimes whatever you're using to cope with you right now for you is all you got. And to be able to give yourself grace and say, okay, like I know what I'm doing is probably not the healthiest thing and it makes me feel bad, but right now it's the only thing I can do to really continue to move forward in my life. And even having that awareness, even saying that to yourself, and if somebody is listening to this and they can take that and they can say that to themselves, that is like the crack in the door to say, okay, I see what's happening. And I'm maybe not ready to like make a change right now, but I know that I can because I can see the light cracking through the door. I can see that there's an opportunity to change this. So I just wanted to add that because having that grace is so important, because sometimes all we got is what we're doing in the moment may be all that we have.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Were you in Ballroom?
I am still in Ballroom.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. I used to when I lived in LA, I used to be a part of a Kiki house, but I also
Okay.
walked runway and walked realness. And
Love it.
I haven't done it in a while, but I have been in like just constant reflection of the category of realness. And I'm curious to like just how do you feel about it? Because it does kind of feel like it enforces like that
Mhm.
masculinity, femininity,
Yeah.
and it does give it like a sense of performativeness. But I'm curious to know how do you feel about it?
Yeah, this is a question I ask myself a lot because I am, if I know you view my content and I talk a lot about this masculinity versus femininity thing and just being able to lean in both of your energies. And so it is like counter intuitive. Is that the word that I'm looking for? I'm just going to use it because I think it might be the word that I'm looking for, but it's counterintuitive that I also walk that same category of realness in Ballroom, because as a masculine presenting man walking that category, it is perpetuating that kind of like that overt masculinity, that societally accepted masculinity, and like that's what you have to show up as in this category in order for you to get your tens and to win. So I've struggled a little bit with this because I'm like, I'm the type of person, I am masculine presenting. If I walk out into the world and you don't know me, 9 times out of 10, you probably won't suspect that I'm gay unless I'm feeling it that day and I'm listening to some music and my hips are, and I'm just like, really, but sometimes I'm just walking and I'm just like, you may know, I don't know. I always think like maybe people do know. I don't know. But when you look at me, if I'm not doing anything, most likely you're probably going to see me as a masculine presenting. I mean, as a masculine man, as a straight man, as a heterosexual man. But I also love and appreciate my feminine energy. I also walk realness with a twist. I vogue. So for me, that is so important because it just makes me feel so into that feminine energy, and I feel like a femme queen. Like I feel like a woman, and I'm just like, this feels great. Like I don't know, it just feels good. And so when I think about when I walk realness, I'm like, damn, like I have to pretend to be this really masculine man. And sometimes I do feel like that. Sometimes like I do feel like a really masculine man. Sometimes like, if we go back to the talk around sex, sometimes I do feel that very alpha energy in that space sometimes. And sometimes I feel the very submissive energy, right? And so going back and forth on that, it's like it's a struggle to have to go on stage and pretend to be this thing that I'm like, sometimes I am this thing, but like not always. And it it feels weird to like be really like, yo, what's up? Like, and I'm just like, I'm not like really like that. Like in the real world, I'm like a very sweet, kind person. So it's like I mean, I could fight. I'll fight. I'll fight if I have to. Okay, like I used to box and stuff like that. So
Oh, that's dope.
I could fight, but I don't want to, because for me, it's
Yeah.
like it's not worth it. You know what I'm saying? But when you're on stage walking that category, depending on which realness category that you're walking, you got to present this really alpha, like, yo, I will really, you want to go? Like, what's up? You know what I'm saying? The way that I try to see it now is I am playing a part in a movie or in a show or in a play.
That's
And when
so
I go up
real.
there, I'm an actor. That's what it is. And many people will tell you if you go into ballroom, it is pretend. It's a fantasy world, right? So some people that do walk the category of realness, even some of the OGs, right? Some of the icons and legends, they are really like real. Like a lot of them are just very, very, very like alpha masculine type shit like that. But I feel like as we've grown culturally and societally, especially in the queer spaces, even in ballroom, some other ways of presenting realness and presenting masculinity are being accepted. And so it's changing and shifting a little bit. But for me, I got to be honest. I'm playing a part. Like when I go out and I play it very well. You know what I'm saying? I do it. And I win and I love it and it's fun.
It
You know,
is. It
and
really
I see
is.
the other side of it. You know, and sometimes I think, wow, when I leave here, you know, I don't want people to think like I don't even think about it like that. I don't say like I don't want people to think. I tell myself like, okay, that's not the real world. Like I don't always have to be like that. And I also don't always want to be like that because sometimes I do feel like I want to be a little like girly and like like so, it's just it's a balance. So sometimes it feels strange, but the way that I look at it now is like I'm playing a part. I'm here for the fantasy. It's fun to do it. It's interesting to where what you can do with your body, with your face, with your effect, with all of that stuff. So for me it's like, because when I walk executive realness now. I used to walk everyday
Okay.
realness, yeah, and I walked thug realness like a few times. I'm like, thug realness that's just not me. Like I'm not a thug. Like it's just not me. You know what I'm saying? So everyday realness I would walk, but now I've walked executive realness. I feel like that's a great category for me. But when I go up there, I'm not an executive in real life. I'm not a banker. I'm not a CEO. You know what I'm saying? So again, it's playing a part. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I hope that answered your question. I know
No,
I kind of,
I,
I,
I I love that. And I'm thinking about, shout out to my mother, Gigi, House of Mark
mhm,
Jacobs. But she would always tell me, because I think I used to be in my head about showing up. Like I know externally I may present masculine,
mhm,
but when you have to perform it, it's like, am I walking? Am I this? Am I that? And she used to tell me, just go up there and be yourself. Like you got the look, like just be
yeah,
yourself and you got it.
mm,
And that was always fun to me, like to show up, to look at realness as showing up authentic when I
mm,
would do like the everyday. I never did any other like types of realness, but I would
yeah,
love to challenge myself to take it on as like an
mhm,
acting role. So I appreciate you sharing that.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Something I did want to ask, like in connection to masculinity and femininity, is just how do we give people space to show up as their full selves? Because I feel like so much of like just how we show up in the world is fetishized. And even myself, I've experienced where like people, when I first came out, people would tell me like, oh, you're being too masculine, you're trying to act too masculine. And when I start letting myself like fully be in my full form, people would be confused, like, oh, I thought you were more masculine than that. But how do we give people a space to just show up as a full human being?
Yeah, that's a difficult question because I think we are still in this really weird space with masculinity and femininity. You know what I'm saying? Like, I talk a lot about accepting both of those energies, but just because we all have feminine energy within us doesn't mean that it's going to show up in the same way as another person's feminine energy. You know what I'm saying? Like, your feminine energy might not be this or this, right? It might just be like you are just more soft spoken or you're more calmer or you're just sweet. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that our definitions of what masculinity and femininity are, we don't have an actual understanding of them yet. And so we're trying to still fit them into these boxes of what society is telling us, you know, what heteronormativity looks like and what masculinity should look like versus femininity. So I think that we have to do better in just like seeing people for who they are without immediately placing a label onto them. And that's really difficult to do because as human beings, the way that we understand things is by labeling them. So when you don't have a label that you can put onto somebody, you are confused by them, or you're angry by them, or you don't, you know, relate to them because you can't find something that you can place them into, you know, this box. And I think that that was kind of maybe your experience as well. So I don't know that I have the answer to this question. I think what I would say is give people the space to explore themselves and to learn themselves and to see them for who they are in that moment rather than trying to force them into anything that they may not want to be, and just let people be. You know what I'm saying? Like, because there are some masculine gay men that are just really masculine. I have an ex-boyfriend, and he literally was like the most masculine man ever. You know what I'm saying? Like, he just it was just who he was. It
Yeah.
was who he was, and I could see that. And so, and anytime he would do it and try to do anything remotely feminine, it just looked awkward. You know what I'm saying? So, but his feminine energy probably showed up in a different way. Like I said earlier, like,
Yeah.
and maybe soft spokenness or the way that he loves, or I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So I think we have to broaden our horizons in terms, or broaden our perspectives in terms of what masculinity and femininity can look like.
I love that.
Yeah.
I want to transition into where the soul grows, and I'm curious to know, like, what inspired you to start it?
Yeah. So I started Where the Soul Grows in January of 2022. I think it was the beginning of 2022. I was in Puerto Rico. So prior to going to Puerto Rico, I had moved back home here to Boston from New York. My relationship had ended, lost my apartment, lost my job. My life was in shambles. So I moved back home and I was like rebuilding myself. And so I wanted to get deeper into my roots and really understand who I was as a person, my identity, my culture. And so I decided to go back to Puerto Rico to visit my grandma after like 20 years of not seeing her. And I was doing all of this self discovery, and I was learning so much about myself. And I was like, I want to continue this into the new year. I was there for Christmas and into the new year. So I spent New Year's there. And I was like, I don't know if I want to have like a New Year's goal or whatever, but I want to have something that I can focus on to continue to move forward into the new year with. And I started to think about, okay, well, if I'm gonna, whatever goal it's gonna be, how can I know that I'm gonna accomplish that goal? And I was like, what if I had an accountability partner? Like, that would be so cool. And then all of a sudden I was like, what if I had a group that like helped me to, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I can create this group. And so I started to think of like, and then all of a sudden it actually started as the accountability group for queer men of color. That was like the first name of Where the Soul Grows. And so I got on Instagram and I created this flyer. I've never done anything like that before. So the first flyer I ever did was like crazy looking, but I posted it and like 50 people like signed up, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is so cool. Like, I was so excited. And I was like, okay, like, what am I gonna do? And like, so the first meeting that we had, I waited till I came back to Boston because I was in Puerto Rico. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do the Zoom thing, and I set it up or whatever. But the idea came to fruition because I wanted to provide a space for other people to experience what I was experiencing in that moment, was healing and vulnerability and like joy and happiness and self-discovery and self-actualization. I was like, oh, like, I've learned so much. Like, I want to share that with other people, but I also want to also want to be held accountable to continue that journey. So that's how it came into fruition. And gosh, that first 6 months was amazing, incredible. Like I was like, what is happening? I don't know what I'm doing. I've never started anything like this before. Like, this is so cool. But I started holding these workshops and conversations, and then I started inviting like people into like tell their stories, and I had like some influencers and like some celebrities and things like that. And I remember one time, oh, why am I forgetting her name right now? She's an actress and producer. Lena Waithe.
Okay.
Yeah, she reposted one of my flyers, and I was like, what? Like, this is crazy. Like, it's just so, I was like, okay, what I'm doing clearly is like my purpose. I'm supposed to be doing something like this. So I continue to do it, and it's developed into what it is today, which is Where the Soul Grows. We still do the virtual get-togethers via Zoom. We do workshops. We have one coming up actually this month, which I'm going to post about this week, on cultivating joy. Navigating grief and cultivating joy as queer men of color. Just to kind of going into the holiday season and into the new year. And we did some in-person events too. I did 2 in Atlanta, 1 in New York. I want to do more of those in the year of 2025, but I'm also working on this big project under this umbrella of Where the Soul Grows to give back to the community for them. So I won't speak too much on that right now because it's still kind of in ideation stage, but it's been calling me, and I'm just so like excited, and I can't wait to give it to the community. So yeah, that's where I am right now with it.
That's really dope. I started a book club earlier this year, just like a Black and brown queer men's book club. And it just creates space for us to have like just really meaningful conversations. And I'm curious to know, how important do you think healing is in community?
So important. I don't think that we can fully. Okay, well, let me rephrase that, because I was gonna say I don't think we can fully heal without community, but we no one ever stops healing. So, in order, I think, to feel the true impact of healing is when you can take what you've learned on your journey, on your healing journey, and give that to somebody else. Because in order for the world to heal, we have to help each other to heal in community. So I think that it's so important. Like, yes, there are moments in time where we may have to heal in isolation, of course. Like, I think that's just natural. But I think bringing your healing journey into a community is not only going to make such an impact for yourself, you're going to impact other people who will then impact other people who will then impact other people. And that's going to go in a circle and come back to you. And you're going to see all of the impact that you've had through your own healing journey, and that in and of itself is going to heal you more, because then you're going to see like, wow, I made a difference in somebody else's life. And I think giving to other people or being in service to other people, I think it may have been like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who said something about, like, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's like, not everyone can be like famous and a celebrity, but everyone can be in service of other people. And I believe in that. When you are in service of other people, you are changing the world, because you are giving yourself to somebody else so that they can be helped to then give themselves to somebody else. And that, I think, is the beautiful thing about community, because it's coming from our spirit, it's coming from our soul, it's coming from our heart. And we're doing it with just the sole purpose to help each other. And we need that in this world.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah.
So where do you envision like Where the Soul Grows going? Like what do you feel like is the next steps in the journey?
Yeah. So the next steps for sure is, I kind of touched on it earlier. It's creating a platform for people to access. Right now, Where the Soul Goes is very focused on queer men of color, gay men of color, same gender, loving men, specifically because I am myself a gay man, a Black gay man. And so my experience, I can speak so well to. And so I can create so many things around that, because I'm speaking from my own experience and from other people in my community. Eventually one day I would like to potentially open it up to all queer people of color, but I want to make sure that what I'm creating is a safe space for people. And right now I'm learning how to do that with just directly with my community of gay men of color. But what I want this to become and what it is going to become and what I'm working on right now is creating a platform for people to access these healing tools and resources, through their phones easier than easier than it was to do it, in the past or at all. I don't feel like we have many places that we can directly go to and find healing resources for us. And there's very minimal spaces for that. So I just want to add into that and say, hey, like, you don't have to go to YouTube or to Google or to this website or to these places. You can find all of that here. And that's what I want to create. So that's kind of like an ideation right now. And 2025, hopefully I'll launch something like that.
That's really dope.
Yeah.
All right. So this last segment of the show is called 5 Questions of Freedom. This is brought to you by Feel Free to Feel Free. And you can answer these questions any way you like. The first question is Boston or New York?
Boston. To live?
Yeah.
Yes, Boston.
Okay. What is one affirmation that you use that you can share?
One affirmation that I use that I can share. I was gonna say one that's more of a mantra. This is gonna sound really simple, but this helps me a lot. Everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. I repeat that to myself when I'm very anxious, when I'm feeling just like unsure. That's what I repeat to myself.
I love that. If you could have a conversation with anybody, who would it be?
My mother. Yeah.
That's real. Mm-hmm. Fourth question, what advice would you give to your younger self?
So much advice. I would probably tell myself to be more patient. Actually, no. Pause. I want to rewind and say I would forgive myself a lot sooner. I would forgive myself a lot sooner. I would say, I'm sorry. And yeah, I think that's been such an important step in my journey of healing, is forgiving myself. So yeah, I would definitely forgive myself.
That's really dope. And what is a reminder you want to give to a future version of yourself?
Everything that you are thinking that you can do, you can do it, and you will do it.
I love that. Joshua, where can the people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. My handle is at Joshua Michael Cruz. YouTube, also my handle is at Joshua Michael Cruz. And then I do have TikTok. That is more of my voguing videos, but you can get into that too. Actually, I just changed the handle to also be at Joshua Michael Cruz. And then I have my blog on Substack, which is, you can go on there and probably just search Where the Soul Grows and it'll come up. Those are the places that I exist right now.
That's dope. That's really dope. Joshua, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate this conversation. And man, I know we're going to probably have more conversations after this. So I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. I hope whoever's listening got something out of this. And thank you for creating this space. It's so needed. And just know that you are changing people's lives. So thank you for having me here. It's such an honor.
I appreciate that. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. This is Mike Brown, and this is The Art of Letting Go. Peace. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of The Art of Letting Go. If you like what you heard, Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. Also, leave us a review. Let the people know what you think. Let me know what you think. Good, bad, indifferent. I love to hear it. Also, I'm trying to build up my newsletter subscribers. I'm at around 450 to 500 right now. By the end of the year, I want to have 1,000 subscribers. It's really good. It's almost as good as the podcast, if not better. And I'm not just saying that because it's mine. So make sure you sign up for that newsletter and also sign up for my Patreon. There's a free option, but I just want to be connected to y'all directly. Thank you. And I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.
Hey y'all, my name is Dana.
And I'm Stephanie.
And we are your Hella Cheese Made podcast host. We wanted to make sure that we let you all know where you can come and follow us. So we do have a Patreon channel where you can watch all of our visual content, but we also are across many streaming platforms as well.
Yes, so feel free to go ahead and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and all of our social media platforms like Instagram and YouTube.
That's right. And you can follow us at Hella Cheese Made Podcast on all those platforms like Instagrams and Thread, as well as YouTube. We are looking forward to having all of you join us in the Familia, and we hope that you are listening and enjoying our show. Thank you so much for your support. Bye. Familia.